Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the elite members of the channel. Thank you all for your continued and dedicated support. You have my deepest gratitude. If you are new to the channel and you begin to like what you are hearing, a like, comment, or subscribe really would help the channel out. Also, if you would like to support the channel, the Buy Me a Coffee link is down in the description. Without further ado, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in to get warm, and prepare for your dose of Vocal Melatonin entitled True Scary Stories. Right after this intro, an ad will play. I'll read the first story an ad will play, and after that, there will be no more ads within this video. Disclaimer, this video is for educational and entertainment purposes. So, a bit of a weird situation has been happening with our neighbor, and I'm not sure how to process it. We've lived in our apartment for several years now, and a few months ago, a new neighbor moved in next door. We've rarely seen her, and we don't consider ourselves bad neighbors. We're mostly just chill, watch dumb TV shows, maybe make some stupid jokes, but always in the privacy of our apartment, never loud or disruptive. Here's the strange part. A month ago, my partner and I went downstairs at around 10 p.m. or so and ran into her in the hallway. She was waiting for the elevator. The button was already clicked, so she clearly had gotten there first and was just waiting. But as soon as she locked eyes with us, her face morphed into this look of pure, visceral fear, like she'd seen a ghost or something. She quickly turned and fled down the hall, standing by a different apartment door, waiting until we got on the elevator, and then waiting for the next one to come down. We thought it was super odd, but just brushed it off. Maybe she was just having a bad day or something. We don't know. But today, things got even stranger. I went out again, and she was just walking out of her apartment. The moment she saw us, she immediately turned and ran back inside, like some sort of frightened animal. Then I saw her dart towards the laundry room, do something in there, and ran back to her apartment with this terrified look on her face. My partner and I are honestly super confused and uncomfortable. We have no idea why she's acting like this. Is she genuinely scared of us for some reason? Does she have some sort of mental illness? Should we confront her, or is this something we should just leave alone? This one is going to be a long story. I'm sorry. So, where to start? I met them when I was 15. He was 17. Looking back then, signs were all there. It started with small things. Us just roughhousing like buddies. We are both guys. But it would escalate to them taking me back behind the shed where my friends couldn't see and holding me against the wall, fake hitting me. Like pretending to hurt me while laughing the entire time. But he did actually hurt me. I would have bruises for weeks. One time he literally shoved my face into stinging netties, but my naive 15-year-old self thought it was all in good fun. If only I knew then what I know now. We started dating at the end of my sophomore year, and over the summer things progressed. He started to beg me to give him messages, and whenever I would refuse, he would pin me down and tickle me until I relented and said yes. And when I stopped before he was ready, he'd go back to tickling me. Sometimes he would just randomly pin me down and tickle me. I would beg him to stop, but the only way to get him to stop was to literally fight him off of me. This happened almost every single time we hung out. I grew to dread it. I don't know why I kept going back. Honestly, I was just so in love with him. I'm 5'3" and weighed less than I do now, about 100 pounds. He is 5'7" and lifted for context. I learned a lot about how to fight somewhat bigger off of me in those days. It wasn't just the tickling, though, as I stated before, just the jokingly beating me up, but the force his punches were not jokes. I would have bruises all over my arms and thighs for them punching me. One time, I got in the front seat of our friend's car when he wanted shotgun, so he proceeded to punch my arm the entire 15-minute drive until I was almost crying because I kept trying to move away and tell them to stop. My friend who was driving did nothing. I don't even know why. He was even older than both of us. I don't know why he thought that was normal. It wasn't just punching me either. I had recently gotten my ear pierced, and he thought it was so funny to smack me upside the head. Once he made me bleed, and when I told him, he just said he hadn't. I tried to talk to him about this so many times, asking, "Please just don't touch my ears." And every time I asked, all he would do was correct my grammar. This was over text. I was honestly scared to say anything in person. We ended up breaking up and just staying friends. I spent all my free time at his house like an idiot. Another thing he started doing was always wanting to smoke me up, but never smoking himself. Huge red flag, I know. But at the same time, all I was thinking was more weed for me. I say all of this, so explain what our relationship was like and how utterly confusing this was for us all, especially me. To this day, I am still confused why they acted this way. And now, for the part where I think he is trying to kill me. I was 16 and he was 19. The day started off normal. We were just going to hang out. From what I remember, this time period is kind of spotty memory for me. The next thing I remember is him sitting on top of my chest and arms pinning me down like he would normally do to tickle me. But this time, he had both hands around my neck, choking me. Not in a sexual way, like both hands on my windpipe. I couldn't breathe. Could barely talk. I kept hitting his hands and arms trying to pull him off my neck. It wasn't working. I was trying to say, "I can't freaking breathe. Let me go." But, as I said, I could barely talk. I remember thinking, am I gonna die? Is he really going to try and kill me? This whole freaking time he was laughing and smiling. I honestly don't remember how I got him off me, but I think I must have used my legs or somehow rolled over. The next day, I almost forgot it even happened until I realized my neck was sore and bruised when I was at school. I texted him, "You left bruises on my neck." All I got in response was, "Oh, sorry." I wished I could say that this was the last time I hung out with him, but it wasn't. I actually forgot it happened until weeks later when I was talking to my friend and she was horrified. So I decided I never wanted to see him again and texted him that. And he said, "That's understandable." That's all I freaking got. I have no idea what he would have done if we kept hanging out, or if I was just a little weaker. Honestly, I don't want to think about it. I'm posting this because it's not something I can ever really talk about. Being a guy, the response I've gotten is, "You must have given him the wrong idea. He probably thought you were just down to wrestle." But now that I'm older, I know what wrestling with your friends is, and it is always mutually agreed on. Not like that. I'm still so confused. I'm 19 now and can't imagine treating someone like that. Oh yeah, and our whole friendship group at the time called me crazy and said I was overreacting. for not wanting to hang out with him anymore and essentially cut him out. It was insanely wild. So yeah, Crazy Ex, I hope we never meet again. Before I get started, out of respect for everyone's privacy, names in this story will be changed. The important people to know are me and my cousin, who we'll just call Drew. Some of the prominent neighborhood kids we'll call Josh, Kylie, and Evan, and of course Gabe. To set the story, this was around the time my mom and dad divorced. It wasn't a clean divorce. There was a lot of going on around this time. My mom had to move out of the school district and into a small home quickly. My dad kept the house in our neighborhood. I bring this up to explain that although my two brothers decided to stay with my dad, me and my cousin, who lived with us most of the time, decided to move in with my mom. The issue was that my mom's new place wasn't within the school district, which meant no buses. So the setup was that she'd bring us to school before work, and after school, we would catch the bus to my dad's house and stay there for a couple of hours until she got off work. Now that everything is explained, let's get into what you're really here for. There were quite a few kids in our neighborhood, and I guess you could say we all got along and hung out quite a bit. We would all ride the buses together, hang out after school, and hell, even tried to build forts in the mosque. The mosque was a spot in the woods you could access through a small opening at the end of a cul-de-sac. This is important for later. It was an everyday thing for us, until one day, a new family had moved into the neighborhood, and with them was their son, Gabe. He had brown hair, and he was skinny. We first met Gabe on the school bus, and us being curious about a new kid in our neighborhood, we were all eager to talk to him. You'd probably think that we got some off vibe about him, or maybe something about him was creepy, but honestly, he just seemed like a regular kid. He seemed to fit in with the other kids in the neighborhood. It became normal to see me, Josh, Kylie, Drew, Evan, and Gabe hanging out. Rather, all of us or a combination of the few. After getting to know him, we learned that Gabe actually used to go to our school, but got expelled after he threw some stuff at his teacher, and only just that school year led him back into our school. Back then, we brushed it off as something edgy he did, but knowing the events now, it should have been the first red flag. You see, Gabe, Drew, and I became close. I'd argue closer than the other kids. I would have considered him a friend instead of just another neighborhood kid to hang out with, which is why we didn't immediately drop him after the following event. I wasn't there for this, but I heard about it after the fact. Drew and I got on the bus one day, and immediately I noticed Gabe wasn't there. We sat next to each other every day on the bus. I just assumed he was absent, and Drew decided to sit by me. Kylie and Evan, who sat near us, started talking about something that happened, and we joined into their conversation. Apparently, not long after Drew and I left to go to Mom's, Gabe had invited Kylie, Evan, and Josh to his house. Now, I don't remember what set this in motion or what really happened, but the hangout ended with Gabe chasing Josh home with a knife in his hands. Josh lived on the other side of the neighborhood, and once he got home, his mother came out to see what was going on, as she heard him yelling for her from the front yard. When she stepped out, Gabe chased both of them inside. The scariest part? They heard from Josh that he was laughing and had a smile on his face as he did it, like he enjoyed terrorizing them. The cops were called, and honestly, I don't know what came out of that other than Gabe was gone from school for a few days after that. When he came back, he acted like it never happened. The kids in our neighborhood started growing apart from Gabe after that, especially John, who I actually never saw talk to him again. I mean, who would blame him? I guess I felt bad for Gabe a little bit. My stupid brain must have decided it was a bad prank that went too far or something like that. Oh, how dumb was I? I truly believe Gabe changed after that, like something had just clicked in his brain. Not long after that, we were on the bus, and I was talking to him as we sat in the same seats. All of a sudden, he just pulled a pencil out and tried to stab me with it. Not only tried, but he did stab me in the neck. Luckily, it only broke the skin, but it shocked me. He laughed like he was joking, and I decided to move seats. When I got off, I felt the need to explain what happened to the bus driver. I never should have done that. I believe to this day that one choice caused what happened next. He was kicked off the bus for a couple of days. When he returned, they made him sit in the front of the bus. He knew it was me who snitched on him. When I'd walk past him to get off the bus, he would just glare at me, and it felt evil. He called me names and a snitch, and I was honestly scared of him. Fast forward a week later, and all the kids in our neighborhood just decided that they wouldn't hang out with Gabe anymore. And I wish I could say the same. Even after apologizing, I had just spilled to you all. I was naive and dumb. Eventually, he messaged me apologizing and messaged me to ask if Drew and I wanted to hang out. I don't know why, but we agreed. I think I remember him asking that he and some other kids were going to hang out in the moss and build some forts. And I think that's why we agreed, because other kids would be there. So we set off to meet him at his house, which was just down the street from ours. We knocked on his door and he answered it, holding a knife. Screw the red flag. I was ignoring a whole red alarm at this point. It was a kitchen knife with some sort of orange handle. With a smile on his face, he held his arm up and just started cutting himself. We should have just left there. Why didn't we just leave? After a couple of cuts, he laughed, like it was some sort of joke. It wasn't until now that I realized this kid was psychotic. Like something was really wrong with him. He had a couple tools with him and told us to follow him to the mosque. And for some dumb reason, we did. I was holding out hope that he'd be normal when all of the other kids would be there. We get to the small opening to the moss and walked in. To get to the small pond in the moss, you had to go down a slightly steep hill and through the brush, and you'd be there. I bet you could feel my surprise when I realized nobody else was there. I looked at Gabe, who just chuckled. "They must be late. Let's just get started," he said to me. Both Drew and I were on edge, and I bet Gabe could feel it. "Hey, go find some sticks and logs to build the fort," he told me. He pointed over toward the pond. I obeyed and made my way over to the area. About 10 or 15 seconds after I started walking, I just got the feeling to turn around, and I'll never ever stop thanking God for doing just that. Gabe was there, creeping up on my cousin, who was picking up a large rock. Gabe had a hoe-looking tool in his hand, raising it slowly. I shouted, "Hey!" towards him. My cousin jolted up, and Gabe quickly lowered the hoe and looked at me in confusion. I ran up to them, telling them my mom messaged me and that it was time to go. This was a lie. My phone only worked on Wi-Fi at the time. I felt that Gabe knew that I saw him. So I grabbed my cousin, who didn't for a second question me, and we quickly started leaving. And at that moment, He chased us. We booked it through the woods for a solid half of a minute and got to the steep part, quickly climbing up it. I looked back and saw Gabe with the face I could only describe as a psychopath, chasing us still. I prayed that we wouldn't slip or fall, and thank God we didn't. Luckily, Gabe struggled a little bit, giving us time to bolt out of the entrance. We run halfway up the street and turn around. Gabe wasn't there. In fact, we never saw him leave. We went home, and the next day we told some of the other kids what happened. The weirdest part is, though we never saw Gabe again, not on the bus or at school. Very shortly after his parents moved from that house, and my dad moved out of that neighborhood a year later, with my mom finding a newer house in our school district. This was years ago. I recently looked Gabe up to see whatever happened to him, but nothing came up. No Facebook page, no Instagram, nothing. It's like he just vanished. Like he never even existed in the first place. But I know he did. I don't live anywhere near there anymore, and thank God for that. Gabe, I don't know where you are or what happened to you, but I'd like to leave it that way, and let's never meet again. I'm not a really good storyteller, but I've got a story to share with you. I'll try my best here. This is when I think it all started. Me and my friends went to a cemetery to play with a Ouija board. We followed all the right rules, but nothing happened for a while. Until one day when I was in my guest house, I started noticing my door was moving. Door encounter number 1. I was walking into my house and I noticed my door was moving. It freaked me out that the door was moving, so I shouted, "Is someone there?" The door just stopped moving on its own. So I quickly turned around and got my ass out of there with a whole bunch of house noises following behind me. I think it was excited that I noticed it. I got my little brother to get his opinion on the door. We asked it some questions like, "Are you here?" and gave it a test. I told the door to wait, 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 shut. And it works. It listens. That's how I confirm if its presence is in the room or not, because sometimes it or he isn't there and he doesn't listen. My brother originally was freaking out now. He blames it on the wind. Door encounter number 2. I am now moved into the house with the haunted door. I was chilling with one of my friends when the door started moving. My friend saw and said, "Ghost confirmed by Danny's door," as a joke. And the door just shut and stopped moving, which freaked us out, so we started talking to the door because we were convinced that the demon is trying to communicate through the door. Reason for why I think he communicates through the door is because it is loose and doesn't latch shut. So the wind has an easy time moving the door around if it wanted to. And I think the demon uses the wind to move the door in a specific way to communicate to us. The rules of my Ouija door was we asked the door a question and it would shut for yes and swing open for no. And if there was something it needed to tell us, we would go up the alphabet until I got something. And it would return whatever it got by closing. The door would literally wait patiently until I got a certain letter. Whenever I asked the door for its name, and then we started screaming the alphabet, I got Zozo. That's why I'm here. I don't know if they are related, but I've been doing stuff that resembles my dead uncle, and as a demon who likes to impersonate the dead, I think it's messing with me. I don't know. But my sister has noticed and thinks it's freaky how much alike I am to him. Story is, whenever I was with my friends doing a little bit of partying, I was being crazy like I am when I party, and my sister took a notice to my behavior. She said, "You remind me so much of Steve." I actually didn't hear what she said because we had loud music on. I was standing right next to my sister. She was sitting in a chair. So since I didn't hear her, I crouched down in such a way that only my uncle would position himself in. So because of that, my sister said, "You were Steve." It's a crazy coincidence that right after she said it, I reminded her of Steve. I strike a pose that only my dead uncle would have posed in. I've never seen my uncle pose like that before. I just did it without thinking. My friend asked the door if it wants to kill me, and it very strongly shut. Not slammed shut, but shut stronger than it normally was. The answers I got from the door: 63 years of age, male, it wants to kill me, and needs wind to move the door and communicate. It's like a source of energy to do things. It doesn't control the wind, but can use it to interact with our realm in theory. All of this in theory. I didn't get a lot of information out of the door. I'm not sure if this is even real though, but I'll keep you updated if you'd like. This happened quite a few years ago. I had an affinity for a particular white substance in the form of lines back then. One very cold, snowy night around 11 p.m., I went for a walk to meet my dealer. I had never been to this place before, so he gave me the address to a small 2-story apartment building with maybe 6 units in it. Upon arrival, I noticed several strangers inside. After they had lit their pipes, 2 clearly unwashed guys came over to sit at the dining room table where I waited for my G. I've never smoked anything besides weed and cigarettes. I was instantly uncomfortable. They tried small talk, but I grew increasingly uneasy, giving only short, vague answers. I quickly paid for my stuff, grabbed my baggie, and got up from the table. That's when one of the guys offered to walk me home. My heart started to sink. I politely declined. "Oh, I'm okay, thanks. I don't live far." The other guy stood up. "No, really. We can walk with you. We don't mind. We have to get going anyway." That's when my instincts finally kicked in. I became very aware and very scared. I immediately thought, I'm fully dressed and ready to go, but they still have to put on their coats and shoes if I leave now. I'll get a head start and quickly disappear. They said something else as I headed for the door, but I pretended to take a phone call, waved goodbye to my dealer, and closed the door behind me. I jogged down the hallway into the outside door, and once I got outside, I ran for the street. I decided not to take the fastest route home because, from the building, they'd be able to see me. I didn't want them knowing even the slightest direction I lived in if they were really following me. The building was at the end of a street, so instead of going straight up the hill, the way I initially came from, I turned right and started jogging. I kept glancing back, and finally, I saw them, about a block behind, following me. The street I needed, Stanley Street, was across the intersection on my left, about another block ahead at a 4-way light. As I approached the intersection, I recognized the corner house on my right. There was an older man sitting on his porch, smoking. I recognized him. He was another dealer I had met only once a few weeks before when my usual guy was dry. I choked up as I got to his porch and asked if he remembered me. He did and asked, "What's wrong?" I quietly told him, "I think these 2 guys are following me." and asked if I could go inside for a minute until they passed. He didn't hesitate. We went inside, past his front living room and into the kitchen, where I explained what had happened. He told me not to worry, that I was safe there, and I could stay as long as I needed to. Then, we heard a knock at the door, and I started to panic. He went to the door and looked through the peephole and yelled, "Just a minute." He came back quickly and whispered that he knew the guys and was going to invite the guys in to have a hit. He told me to sneak out of his back door, which was beyond the kitchen, go to the right of the yard and find the gate. This would lead to a side street. He instructed me to creep up along the side of his house, close to the shrubs, and check the porch to make sure they went inside. I followed his plan, and when the coast was clear, I didn't jog. I sprinted up Stanley Street and zigzagged all the way home. When I think back now, I'm in disbelief at my actions and how foolish I really was. I thought I was invincible. I was far too trusting. But I thank God for the man who helped me that night. I don't know what those two guys wanted from me, but I'm forever grateful I never had the chance to find out. Hello, I'm a 21-year-old female, if that helps. Now, this might sound maybe a tad bit overdramatic since it's been years, but since this incident has happened, it caused this fear. But I just want to get it off my chest as someone who doesn't really talk about it. I personally find this encounter super creepy, especially getting older and being able to look back on it. I've learned a lot from it, so maybe sharing what happened could either guide others to stay alert that it could happen to them or know the signs. So, I live in rural Ohio, so there's not much that goes on here. We don't live in the best area either, with lots of druggies and pedos. Just if you have kids, you really shouldn't live around here, basically. When I was younger, we didn't really worry much about anything happening to us or questionable things due to the fact our family is known in this area. My grandpa was a known cop for many years and was extremely respected, and people knew he would fight over us. So nobody really messed with us. We also lived around multiple other children our age. It wasn't uncommon to let your kids run around by themselves before nighttime because our neighborhood essentially relied on each other and the other kids to keep each other safe, and it worked for the most part. We knew what people to stay away from, and they knew to stay away from us as well. When I was in middle school, the bus ran at 7 a.m., and we would have to be at the end of our long driveway by 7 a.m. to catch the bus on time. And this happened during winter, and our bus tended to be late sometimes. It would reach around 7:05 to 7:15 at the latest. But we made sure to be out at 7 a.m. in case they were on time. It was me and my two cousins. One was 4 years older than me, and the other was a year older, but we were in the same grade. The road is straight where our driveway is, so cars come by multiple times, and you would be able to see if a car was slowing down and such, and they'd see us as well. We were already told to not stand by the end of the driveway and always keep a distance, so if a drunk driver or whatever happened to swerve, we would be okay for the most part. We were at the age where me and my cousins, who was in the same grade as me, essentially babysat the younger cousin, and we didn't have an adult accompany us at the end of the driveway anymore. It was super cold that day, and the sun was just coming up, and we were annoyed because the bus was late while waiting in the cold. I noticed the car was coming and going again. This happened all the time, so it wasn't like I was checking it out or anything. I just noticed it and went back to listening to my music on my phone. I heard a loud brake sound, so I looked up, and the car was in front of our driveway, now fully stopped. The man in the car was waving his arm towards us to signal to come closer to him. And of course, I refused and was frozen in my spot because this never happened before. He could tell we were obviously shaken back by this and said he worked for a school but was lost and he just got hired. He named a school that was an hour away. Remind you, it's past 7 a.m. at this point, and I immediately knew he was lying. It didn't make sense to me why he would be lost at a job he said he already got. Plus, it being this late, I think he would already be at the school. No way he would be lost to the point he's an hour away from the district and signaling children to his car the way he did if he was a teacher at all. It also made no sense to me logically how he would be lost from a job he obviously had to go into to get hired for. This was before Zoom and all those things, I'm pretty sure. I immediately said I'm going to get an adult, and he clearly panicked and said it wasn't necessary, that he just wanted us to get closer and show him where to go. I pointed straight. I truly don't know the direction to the school district, but that was not my main focus, honestly. I told him to go straight, and he ignored me. My little cousin was moving towards his car, and I grabbed him by his hair and kept him behind me. I refused to let go of his head. I'm shaking, and I'm trying not to show I'm scared because I don't know what's about to happen. The driveway is a long one as well. Like I truly didn't feel safe turning my back on him. I have my other hand on my phone, and I'm shaking, so I'm struggling with gloves on, but I'm able to call my mom, and thank God she answers. She usually would ignore my calls and be on the phone with her boyfriend. The guy gets out of the car when he sees I'm on the phone with someone, and I start immediately sobbing and telling my mom there's a man out here, and I think he's going to hurt us. She comes out running, and the second she gets closer and he sees her, he bolts back to his car and dashes away. A car that was around the corner of the road also dashed away as well. Now looking back is even more scary, since if it was just someone who needed to get past a car that was in the middle of the road by our driveway, they would have just either honked or gone on the other lane to pass them. They definitely also saw the entire thing and didn't get out of their car to help us or anything. So it makes me think they were also in on this entire situation. I'm forced to go to school that day, and my mom calls the cops. When I get home, I found out even more horrible news that just made me realize my gut feeling was correct. My mom told them the car and how it looked and such, and they found an abandoned car that matched her description just up the road. So they found who it belonged to and eventually found out he wasn't a school teacher. He worked on the barges. The cops said they thought it dealt with sex trafficking from the looks of it, and they didn't even catch him, since they already left on foot or whatever. Who knows what would have happened if he got one of us? I'm assuming we would have been on that boat and horrible things would have happened. It still pisses me off that he was never caught, and possibly other kids were victims of this. It's truly terrifying, and to this day, I refuse to go near the road. I still have reoccurring nightmares of it. I'm always on alert now, too, which I most definitely should have been more alert back then, but I was just a kid and clearly didn't realize how it would have affected me in real time. This happened about 6 years ago to me and two other friends. I was 14 at the time of the story, and we were seeing the new Jumanji. This was my second time seeing it, but I was super excited because my mom had decided that I could finally start getting dropped off when I hung out with my friends instead of her accompanying us. After she dropped us off, we went inside, got our tickets and snacks at the concessions, then went to decide where we wanted to sit. This was before there was the assigned seating and you could just sit wherever you wanted. Of course, being teenagers and wanting to be on our own, we sat in the back so we would not interrupt the other movie watchers with our snickering and jokes. There weren't many people there, maybe like 3 groups of kids and various other adults around them, but I did not pay much attention to them. We just wanted to be on our own. Soon after we were settled, the trailers started, and that's when he walked in. I did not pay much attention to him at first, but I still noticed that he was the last person to enter the theater. I can still remember exactly how he looked to this day. He must have been in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. He was Caucasian, had dark eyes, reddish-brown hair, and a short beard. He was wearing running shoes, jeans, a white baseball cap, and a jacket over a t-shirt. He did a quick scan of the theater, and he stopped with his head in our direction and started making his way up the steps. All the while, he remained fixated on us. We were 1 row from the very back, and he sat directly in front of us, right in front of my friend who was sat in the middle. This was the very first, more noticeable red flag. Soon after that, the movie started. I immediately tried to focus in on the movie, but not long after it started, the man started twisting his hat, so at times it faced forwards, then backwards on his head. That would not have been a problem if it wasn't for the fact that every time he adjusted his hat, he would completely turn his head to stare at us, then smirk for a few seconds, then turn back. It continued on like this for almost the entirety of the first half of the movie. He would then giggle to himself quietly, even if the movie was in no way comedic. The vibes were just so off on this guy, bordering on sinister. By the time I had completely lost interest in the movie and remained focused on what he was doing. Soon enough, he changed creep tactics, and every time the movie characters told a joke or said something remotely funny, he would full-on belly laugh and turn around towards us while laughing, making direct eye contact with each of us. And after he got tired of that, he would stand straight up and rotate to face us, smile creepily, then sit back down. I was literally so tensed up that I had stopped eating my M&Ms, and now my friends had started exchanging uneasy glances with me, and I could tell that they were just as uncomfortable as I. I remember clearly my friend on my left grabbing my arm as the movie was getting closer to the end and whispering my name nervously with widened eyes. I replied with, "I know, I have been watching him." I had decided to start coming up with a plan. I already knew that the employees here were unreliable, so I decided to trust the only other thing I could think of without my mom here. Women. It was almost the end of the movie, and I tried and grabbed both of my friends' arms and whispered to them as quietly as I could, "Guys, the time the credits start, I want y'all to run to the bathroom, and I am going to call my mom to come in here and get us out, okay?" They nodded, both looking as terrified and uneasy as I felt. About 5 minutes later, the credits started, and the moment they did, we bolted as quietly as we could. Of course, in my mind, every horror movie scenario was playing in my head, with me being the last to leave the row. So when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I decided to do the dumbest thing I could have done. Please go easy on me. I was young and stupid and scared. I stopped and turned around as my friends ran ahead to the bathrooms. The theater was empty now, except for him, in our row, crawling around and looking under the seats. This felt like it lasted for a couple of minutes, but could not have been more than a couple of seconds. I was just petrified. I couldn't move at that moment, but believe me, I started moving again when his head popped up from the end of the row and, after a jerk motion, scanned the room with his eyes, focused on me. I swear his eyes were so wide I could see the whites from all the way down there. That's when he got up and started running, and so did I. I bolted out of there, skidding on the slick carpet, and shot my way to the women's bathroom, which was 4 theater entrances ahead of me. I could see my friend peeking out at the side of the entrance as I got closer. I noticed that my friend was not accompanying her. After I could speak again and was semi-breathing normally, we headed deeper into the stalls, and I shakily asked her where our friend went. She told me that instead of running into the bathroom, she shot off to the concessions, where there are sometimes employees. This might have been my first option if I didn't know my theater well enough to know that it was a 50-50 chance for my employees to be there at that moment. We then calmed down a bit more, for we were now in the noisier and crowded bathrooms surrounded by other people and adults. After like 4 minutes, we decided to take a peek out of the entrance to see if he was there. And I kid you not, this creepy guy was pacing back and forth in front of the entrance with the most angry look on his face, staring directly at me when I poked my head out. I still didn't know why I didn't tell any of the women around us what was happening. We finally called my mom, close to tears, and told her what was happening. She immediately left the store she was at to come pick us up. As she could hear, we were very upset. After waiting a minute more, we decided to take another look outside, and thank God he was gone. We saw our friend standing near the front of the theater next to an employee. Turns out she had been standing by the worker and watching the man run in my direction, then pace in front of the bathroom, then finally leave. She never said anything to the worker, which I thought was stupid then, and thinking back, it's even stupider. But we were dumb. We waited for my mom to get there, around the employee who never said anything to us and was probably confused as all get out. We finally saw her car pull up and raced out to get into it, and told her to drive the hell away from there as quickly as possible. After telling her what happened, she told us we were probably overreacting and he maybe thought we were cute and we were the ones who misunderstood the situation. Still kind of pissed at her for that one. Very ignorant of a very knowledgeable and usually understanding woman, but maybe she was trying to comfort us? I don't know. All I know is that man did not have good intentions, and we had every right to be as afraid as we were. Just thinking about it gives me the same goosebumps as I had in that theater. I know that if I saw him today, I would know exactly who he is. Stay safe. Always trust your instincts. Even if you think that you are overreacting, they're usually right. I was a volunteer church choir member back when I was in grade school. I was not religious, I just loved to sing. After school, I go to our town's church, still in uniform and sometimes together with a classmate who was also a choir member. It became a habit to go sing for the afternoon mass after school. Sometimes there'd be 2 to 3 other choir members. I figured instead of going to a computer shop and waste my money on games like my friends do, I'm doing a good deed volunteering. Plus, I get to practice my singing. One day, I arrived, but the entire place was quiet. I was told by his staff that Mass was canceled that afternoon, so I can just go home. I remember that there was a newly built prayer room in the building next to the church. People said it's going to be beautiful, so I thought to check it out before going home. That way, I at least didn't waste my time walking to church. To get to the prayer room, you'd have to walk down a wide 20-plus steps staircase. The door is right at the end, just a couple steps facing the stairs. There are narrow hallways on both sides that you wouldn't know was there until you reach the last step. I took about 4 steps down, taking my time, when I saw, as I looked ahead at the door to the prayer room, had thick chains and a big padlock. Right before I even had the chance to turn around, a guy in a black jacket, jeans, and a cap appeared from the left hallway at the end of the staircase. There was a second of him just standing there looking up at me, but not too much, as I didn't get to see a good look at his face. That's when I realized that there were many hallways connected to the church office buildings. I don't mind him at first, as he could just be another staff, until he said, "Let's go pray inside, little girl." Stupid old me responded with, "But it's locked," while pointing at the prayer room door. He didn't say anything and just stood there. Only then did it hit me that something was not right. I don't know why, but instead of running away immediately, I said, "I'll just go pray in church," then turned around and walked away like nothing happened. Little me thought if I showed him I'm panicking, that he might come at me fast. Thankfully, he didn't follow me. I went straight home. I never went back to sing for the choir after that. Looking back, it still gives me chills. I was a kid in an area where, as a child, I thought was a safe place. I just hate that I didn't get to clearly see his face from afar. Whenever I visit my hometown, I wonder whether I've bumped into that guy and he recognized me, but I never recognized him. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true scary stories. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the rest of the members of BackToAshes, along with the new listeners. Thank you all so much for your continued support. I appreciate it more than you know. For without you, I wouldn't have a voice and this channel would not exist. Thank you. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. Until next time, please stay safe out there. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.